Xantula Wrigley was 14 years old when the man she would marry walked through the door of her small village home in Greece, looking like death warmed over.
He looked ragged because he was walking all over the forest hiding. And that's the impression I remember. Tired and cold. We helped him with a bit of food, and my grandfather gave him his boots. Grandfather had a pair of good boots he wore to the church.
The tall man with the bleeding feet, Bert Slim Wrigley, was a 21-year-old soldier out of Melbourne, but more importantly, out of the nearby German prison camp at Thessaloniki. He would become part of one of Australia's best-kept secrets about the Second World War. That is, that 5 of every 6 Australians captured by the Germans and Italians in the war came from the largely forgotten Greek and Creek campaigns of 1941. 7 decades later, a different campaign is still being fought, a campaign for special recognition of those caught up in what historian Maria Hill calls Australia's Second Gallipoli.
I'm referring to the odds and the intent. Basically, Churchill wanted to create another front to fight the Germans. He wanted to take the pressure off North Africa, of the Middle East, which it did. In that sense, it was very successful, and it allowed the Allies some breathing space.
But for the Anzac soldiers in Greece, there was quickly no breathing space. Neighboring Italy had failed twice to take the country before Germany launched the Battle of Greece in April of 1941. It was over in 24 days. The Germans invaded with an estimated 100,000 troops, including mountain and tank divisions, and over 1,000 planes. The British had brought in the 6th Australian Division and the New Zealand 2nd Division from the Commonwealth forces to help its meagre forces defend the country. Dr. Hill, a Greek-born, Sydney-based historian, calculates the lightly armed Allies were outnumbered in frontline fighting troops as much as 4-1, besides having no air support. Arthur Leggett, a 93-year-old survivor of the Battle of Greece, the Thessaloniki prison camp, and a series of other camps, simply knows it was hopeless.
We never had a hope in hell from the day we landed there. This was rather obvious to us, because Churchill just wanted to support our allies and show the world that we're going to back our allies up. But we honestly never had a hope. We make a great old show of the Kokoda Trail and battles north of Australia, but some recognition of some sort would have been greatly appreciated.
To Mr. Leggett, long settled back in Perth, it's too late to recognize the men who fought in Greece now because so few are left. But after decades of staying quiet about what he experienced, he's dedicated his later years to trying to make sure his fellow soldiers in the Battle of Greece are not forgotten. He hesitates to even call what they experienced a battle, saying they were withdrawing across the country from the day they arrived. The Greek army, after half a year of fighting off the Italians, could offer little help, and the Allied forces were quickly forced to retreat and flee on ships. But those who headed south to the strategic island of Crete to reinforce the garrison there were under German attack again just 3 weeks later. Starting on May the 20th, the Germans needed just 11 more days to take the island and would wind up with more than 5,000 Australian prisoners they took to Thessaloniki. Arthur Leggett went on to live a life of kayaking, marathons, and other healthy pursuits he credits for his fit state today, but he can never forget an utterly different time in the camp.
I had reached a stage with hunger that if I was laying on the cement floor, which of course everyone laid on the cement floor, and I wanted to get up, I had to crawl across the floor of the wall and sort of climb up the wall and hang on to it until my head cleared and I could see where I was going. It was as bad as that. Eventually we were given a couple of circular loaves of bread and 3 tins of bully beef, and we were taken down to the railway siding and put in one of those famous cattle trucks. There was 40 men to a cattle truck. And there we were for 6 days and 6 nights. Some men had diarrhea, some had dysentery, some were sick men, and there was just no sanitation. You could work out what it was like.
Mr. Leggett's train went to Germany, and he lived out the war as a prisoner, working in a factory there in the coal mines of Poland, then surviving a march across Czechoslovakia. Slim Wrigley didn't wait to learn his fate in the Thessaloniki camp. After he escaped into the mountains of northern Greece, he met a shepherd who led him to the village home where the teenage Xantula Papadopoulos first saw him. With so many German sympathizers among the Greeks, the family dared not house him for long, but they hid him with an old monk in a deserted monastery and fed him in secret. At another point he hid out with another shepherd, living in a cave on the food slipped to him from a nearby sanatorium. Eventually, Slim Wrigley joined the Greek resistance in the mountains until, in failing health, he was smuggled out on a fishing boat to Turkey, then to Egypt, then home to hospital. In a painful irony, Xantula Papadopoulos' father would die in the same Thessaloniki camp Mr. Wrigley had escaped, shot after being betrayed for helping the Allies. Unaware of it all, Mr. Wrigley would recover physically, but find himself unable to settle for years, until one day in 1949 a letter arrived at his family's home from Xantula Papadopoulos.
It was a winter night, and we were at home sitting around there, and my mother had a big box where we used to keep photos. We thought we would spend the time looking back, photos of our primary school and whatever, to pass the time. And then a piece of paper fell out, just a little square piece, and it had Slim's address on it. It looks like one of the times he was passing through our house in the village, Slim left that with my mother. But with all the tragedy that happened afterwards, we forgot about it. If it wasn't for that night that we were looking through, we would never found it.
Xantula Papadopoulos, in her young 20s by then, was learning English as she studied to become a teacher, like her father. Her mother urged her to write to the Wrigley family and see if their son had survived. Slim Wrigley wrote back quickly, a correspondence ensued, then an offer to visit Australia, marriage, 2 sons, 4 grandsons, and 45 years together before he died in 1995. All these years later, Xantula Wrigley has just been working in Melbourne's Federation Square, a volunteer helping others record their stories of war for posterity.
I'm 86 years old. I feel it's my duty to do something.
On Saturday, it will be Maria Hill's turn to do something, as Xantula Wrigley puts it. In Sydney's Martin Place, Dr. Hill will join an annual official commemoration she helps organize to recognize the Australians who fought in the Greek and Creek campaigns. She says there's a reason the ceremony is held on the anniversary of the Battle of Crete in May instead of the Battle of Greece in April.
We find that it gets subsumed by Gallipoli, and there's very little mention of the Greek and Creek campaigns. So by actually doing it in May, when it's the date of the Creek campaign, it highlights the whole Greek issue and gives it the attention and gravitas it deserves.
Maria Hill says the prisoners from the Battle of Greece came home to no hero's welcome, simply stepping off trains and into their old lives. Even those who escaped capture to fight in places like Papua New Guinea have told her their nightmares later in life came from the incessant bombing by the Germans in Greece. Dr. Hill conducts military history tours to Greece and Crete and says she's found even the children of those who fought there knew little or nothing about what went on.
The only thing they knew is their father had suffered severely, wouldn't talk about it, had traumas and nightmares. They described people sitting outside for long periods of time by themselves, shaking, stressed, angry. One interview, he described his father as after the war, coming back from Greece and Crete. He lived like there was no tomorrow, gambled, drank, didn't save anything, wouldn't take out a bank book, no permanency as a result.